Good morning. Thank you for having me. I do have prepared remarks, and then I was just going to kind of keep this super conversational, but I did, if you don't mind, wanted to start with one little point of personal privilege. So I grew up in Central Illinois. I see a couple Bears shirts here. Yeah, way to go. All right, let's hope that the new quarterback will actually make a difference. Certainly not in my lifetime, but let's see. That having been said, small farm town in Central Illinois, one stoplight. I am not kidding. And when I was all of 10 years old in fourth grade, I won the Battle of the Books. I know this because my mom, when I was named the CEO of Reading is Fundamental, was kind enough to pull the clipping from the newspaper out of her scrapbook and send it to me. And I, in all of my 10-year-old glory with my pigtails and big smile, had read the most books in the community that I grew up in. And I have to tell you, as I kind of reflected on speaking to this group today, I'm a bit of a fangirl. I did have a big debate at 10 with my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Mosier, about the fact that we didn't have enough books in our library. So I could absolutely read more if I was given the chance. And as I stand here before you today as the CEO of the nation's leading children's literacy nonprofit that is truly dedicated to ensuring that all children in this country have access to books, I am really lucky to be here. So thank you, and thank you for letting me tell that story. And I will be sure when I get a picture of this to send it to my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Mosier, who will absolutely be proud of me. But with that, good morning again. It really is an honor to be here before you today at this gathering of book manufacturers, a community united by our shared passion for bringing words to life in a tangible form. As the head of the nation's leading children's literacy nonprofit, together with Reading is Fundamental, you and we have distributed almost 500 million books to children nationwide. So on behalf of Reading is Fundamental and the millions and millions of children that we serve every year, I just want to start by saying thank you. In a world increasingly dominated by digital technology, it is important not to overlook the enduring power of the printed book. I know you all spent the morning dedicated to conversations around AI, and I was super tempted to sneak in, I have to be honest, because I am super interested in understanding how that's going to change our world. But I have worked in the education sector for my entire professional career, and I can tell you with a good bit of expertise to back it up, children cannot learn with a single source solution. There is no one solution that will ensure that every child will be able to learn. We must serve children, indeed all learners, with multi-platform solutions, meeting them where they are, enabling them to learn anything, anytime, anywhere. It would be foolish to assume that technology doesn't hold a place in the future. It for sure does. But it is equally foolish to believe that it will become the future and displace the power of print. For centuries, books have served as vessels of knowledge, enlightenment, and inspiration. They have transported us to distant lands. They have introduced us to unforgettable characters. They have ignited our imagination with stories both timeless and new. With all of that said, they serve as the foundational tool for learning. As stewards of the written word, you all play a vital role in preserving and disseminating knowledge for future generations. Whether printing classics, cutting-edge research, children's books, which is certainly where we live, you all serve as the custodians of human thought, ensuring that the ideas and insights contained within books educate, inspire, ignite imagination long after the ink is dried. So in an age of rapid technological change, the printed book remains a symbol of permanence and authenticity. It's an anchor. And it's an irreplaceable tool in a child's learning journey. So I wanted to share that with you all. I have to believe that you all agree. I'm going to take you on a journey of why Reading is Fundamental believes that, why we distribute literally millions of books every year to children across the country in print form. We don't believe that will ever change. Will it adapt? Will it evolve? Will it, absorb new solutions? For sure. But print books are a central element to the ability for a child to read. And if a child can't read, they cannot learn. And if they cannot learn, they cannot succeed. So we believe books are central. So when we got the call to be able to speak to you all, we, of course, wanted to have the opportunity to thank you, but also really give you an idea of what your work does to really change the lives for children nationwide every day. So with that, at Reading is Fundamental, we are focused on inspiring a joy of reading. We define joy by motivation, frequency, and engagement. It's a complicated formula that we integrate with the science of reading, but perhaps the easiest way to think about it is if you find joy in something, you're more likely to do it. And we believe that every child should read. I think we can all agree with that, right? I've never spoken to a group of people where they're like, oh, Alicia, there are a lot of good things going on in the world, but I don't agree with you that every child should read. That's not something that happens very often. If you can't read, you can't succeed. If you can't read, you can't learn. If you can't read, you can't STEM. I have this conversation super frequently with organizations that really love the idea of having a nation full of engineers and mathematicians and technology leaders, and I'm all for that, but they're not going to learn to STEM. They're not going to learn to science or math or technology if they can't learn to read. So ensuring that they have that foundational building block, making sure that they want to read. We want to do things that we like doing. So at Reading is Fundamental, we're really focused on that part of a child's reading journey, ensuring that we provide that fundamental building block for learning. In schools, teachers teach children how to read. At Reading is Fundamental, we inspire a joy of reading. We encourage children to want to read. We celebrate reading nationwide and bring books to children in communities across the country. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But it might surprise you to learn that 1 in 3 children in this country have a book in their home. That means 2/3 of children in this country do not own a book. I have 3 children. First thing I did was buy them a book. When I found out I was expecting, I bought each of them the same book. I have 3 copies of Brown Bear and Very Hungry Caterpillar and about every other book you can imagine, because my husband and I were able to provide that for our children. We sat down with them. We read aloud to them in the evenings. We created a culture of reading in our home. And many of us, I bet every person in this room has bought a book for a child in their lives at some point, right? Well, of course, you guys make the books, but 2/3 of children in this country live in communities where there is no access to books. We call them book deserts. We also call them the problem that we are here to solve. Our job is to ensure that every child has a book in their home, because statistics show that the more books a child has in their home, the more likely they are to be on a pathway for reading proficiency. At Reading is Fundamental, we make over 3,000 titles available to the communities that we serve. And again, I'll provide you with a little more detail on how we do our work. But we provide a broad range of titles. It's not our job to help a child decide what they're interested in. It's our job to ensure that they have access to titles that they might be interested in. We want them to see that themselves, their experiences in books that they might then be willing to pick up off a table or off a shelf and say, I want to sit down, I want to know how to read this, I want to explore this story. So we really center our work on creating this joy of reading. We provide access to these books to children in communities across the country, and then we create engagement materials around them. We have over 30,000 resources that support the books that we distribute to children. That might mean a puzzle, that might mean a matching game, that might mean a lesson plan for an educator, it might mean tips for a family in multiple languages, because many of the challenges that emerging readers face in this country today are they have parents at home that are not proficient readers themselves, and they may be speaking other languages. So ensuring that we provide the tools for home as well that can kind of create a reading environment in their home. And that's kind of a comprehensive look at kind of what we do with the book. We wrap the book, we call it Beyond the Book. We wrap the book with resources that, again, take the experience beyond the child touching and reading the book into their home, into their schools. So our historical impact, to give you a little background, Reading is Fundamental I am happy to say, been around longer than I have. They were founded in 1966, and for over 56 years, Reading is Fundamental has been dedicated to bringing books into communities, creating a culture of reading for children, and ensuring that they're on a pathway to learning and success. We have served over 190 million children over those 56 years. We operate in all 50 states and territories here in the U.S. We're not an international nonprofit. Every time I have this conversation with my board, they feel very strongly, and I agree, we were founded on the idea that every child in America should be able to read. When we solve that problem, we'll move on to other problems. But for us, our dedicated focus is on serving children in the U.S. We partner and work with nonprofit organizations around the world who look to reading as fundamental for ideas and best practices on how they can be as successful as RIF has been in kind of creating this culture of reading in communities. But we're focused here on the U.S. We've distributed, as I mentioned, almost 500 million books and counting. We're able to do this. We have a relatively small footprint. We're based here in the D.C. area. But our model for success is about creating sustainable solutions for local community partners. So we work with schools, after-school programs, faith-based organizations, community partnerships that really are the pathway to reach kids. We partner with anybody that's dedicated to creating a culture of reading in their community, and then through them, we're able to distribute our books into communities. I also will share a little personal story. Over COVID, all of us had to scramble and figure out how to continue to be able to meet our mission and accomplish our goals. For 35 years, Reading is Fundamental had provided books to a school district in Pennsylvania, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And as we all experienced, most schools shut down for a long period of time over COVID. The superintendent of schools up in Lancaster had called us and they said, look, we're trying to find any solution we can to ensure that kids at least have an opportunity to learn while they're home. If you can get 60,000 books to Lancaster on Wednesday between noon and 2, and I'm not kidding, then we are going to distribute those books with lunches that schools, and you might remember a lot of schools were distributing lunches and things during COVID. They thought that would be a great way to get the kids in their school district the books that they needed. So my husband of 30 years, who truly deserves a medal, drove a Ryder truck with air brakes from Washington, D.C. to Lancaster, Pennsylvania with 60,000 books in the back. And we drove them up to, at first I thought, well, I can put them in the back of my van. Now you guys, I have a minivan because I have 3 kids. And I know you guys as book manufacturers probably immediately were like, you are the craziest person on the planet. Because of course, 60,000 books aren't going to fit in your minivan. We ended up with a Ryder truck. And up we went because the workers at the district only worked between 12 and 2 on Wednesdays. And they were able to distribute those books. It was almost like a happy meal, right? The kids got their lunches and they got their books. Now, obviously, we couldn't do that nationwide because my husband has his own, really important job that he has to do. But it just demonstrates, I think, for you all a sense of what RIF is all about. What we've been committed to for 56 years, and why our community partners and the volunteers that we engage every year to help us do our work are so important. Like I said, we have a relatively small staff here in DC, but our job is to build capacity for these local community partners, give them the tools they need. They know what's happening on the ground in their communities. They know how many children they need to serve. They know where the most need is. And our job is to really partner with them to bring them the tools they need. And we engage these community partners every year with as many resources as we can provide through the partnerships that we're able to develop, again, to ensure that every child has a book at home. So again, our goal is to ensure that every child can read. Our mission is to bring books to children in their home. I like to joke, as most nonprofit leaders should, in some serious form, say, our job is to work ourselves out of a job, right? It would be awesome if I could say we can solve this problem in my lifetime or any of ours here in the room. I think that's probably unlikely, but we don't stop trying. There is no reason, none, that we can't solve this problem in this country. Every child in this country should be able to read. And it might, again, surprise you to learn that over 2/3 of the children in this country are not proficient readers. When you're entering 4th grade, if you're not reading proficiently, you are unlikely to complete high school. You're unlikely to be able to catch up. If you enter kindergarten and you are not recognizing letters. If you haven't heard a certain number of words over the course of your 5 years before you're entering kindergarten, you're less likely to be on a pathway to read by 4th grade. From kindergarten through 4th grade, children are learning to read. They're decoding letters. They're dealing with all the things that learning to read means. After 4th grade, they're reading to learn. After 4th grade, it's about comprehension. Educators aren't trained to teach kids how to read after 4th grade. The resources that are available to children after 4th grade are not designed for children that aren't reading proficiently. It's a crisis. We have a crisis in this country, and our job at Reading is Fundamental is to raise awareness for it, to make sure that we provide tools and resources to the communities that we serve, to have conversations with partners like you to ensure that we're on a pathway to solve this problem. Like I said, whenever I talk to my mom, I'll say, my job is to work myself out of a job. I don't think I'm going to do it in this lifetime, but I am absolutely going to try really hard because I fundamentally believe that every child can read. We just need to give them the tools and the resources and all the people around them the tools and the resources they need to be able to read. We consider this a crisis. This is a crisis. I think COVID highlighted this. I think all of us that were either raising children in COVID or experiencing COVID in our own way recognized that children are struggling readers. The nation is paying attention right now, and we want to make sure at Reading is Fundamental that we shine a spotlight on that. We are talking at events. We are doing everything we can to highlight the need for this country to pay attention to this problem because we can solve it. We can solve it, and we can all agree that every child should be able to read. So we believe reading is everything. I've talked a little bit about this. I'll continue to talk about it. It empowers everything. It enables everything. It is the first thing we can invest in, and it is the most sustainable thing that we can invest in. And the fact that we have 25 million children in this country that are not reading proficiently means that they will be adults that are not reading proficiently. The idea that over time, that if we could get in front of this, if we could solve this problem for children now, the problems that would be solved beyond that would be amazing. And again, I've put some stats up here. If you visit our website, rif.org, you'll find just a plethora of stats that will tell you everything from the percentage of children that are more likely to be incarcerated as youths to the percentage of children that are unable to read proficiently as adults because they start off not being able to read proficiently. We believe, and I think that you guys would agree, that the benefits of book access are critical to ensuring a child is on a pathway to read. So there are volumes and volumes of research that have been done over the years that haven't changed. Technology hasn't changed this. The introduction of AI won't change this. If a child has certain kind of tools that are provided for them in their learning years, they absolutely will be on a pathway for opportunity. Again, we can't solve everything for every child, but we can sure make sure that they have the tools they need to be able to make their own choices. And reading is the core benefit that we believe they need. If studies show that if a child has books in their home, they're more likely to be successful in school. If they've been read aloud to at home, they're more likely to be successful in school. If they're read aloud to at school, they're more likely to be successful. You've seen, for any of you that have a child in their lives that have gone to school, I am confident that you've either been asked to or you've heard their stories when they come home where their teacher read a story aloud. Right? I went in and read stories aloud to all my kids. I do it a lot now. I'm lucky enough to do it a lot now in the job that I have. But reading aloud is a core element of ensuring a child can read. And I think this is something that will hopefully resonate with all of you. It's not just the story that's being told. It's holding open a book. It's modeling that behavior. It's a child seeing that you read from one side of the page to the other side of the page, that you turn the page. All of those things that model behavior are critical. And then the storytelling itself, the joy that a child sees in the story being told, all of that behavior is modeled, and children really absorb that. There are millions of studies. They're all available on our website. I encourage all of you to leverage them if it is helpful, that demonstrate that component is an important part. You can't do that with a digital book, right? And children have access to digital books, and that's an important part of how children today will learn. But the fundamental elements of touching a book, of opening a book, of understanding how to navigate a story and what can come out of that story are central to how a child learns to read. And that is something that we focus on every day. We host read alouds all across the country. Like I said, I used to do it for my kids. They're too old for it now. I know it's shocking. You probably are looking at me thinking, you probably have toddlers at home. And you laugh. My son, I will tell this story really quickly. My oldest is in his second year of his PhD program for educational technology. He sits on 2 research studies for AI and how AI will impact learning into the future. I also have a 14-year-old that really doesn't like to read, but she recognizes that reading is what gets her where she needs to be. So, the idea that I can go into classrooms across the country and do read alouds for young emerging learners, you see the power of that. I see the power of that every day. You talk to any educator in a K-3 environment, they're going to tell you the more books they have that they can read aloud to children, the more successful those kids are going to be in their classroom. And that's a big part of what we do. We provide read alouds in a bag to classrooms across the country. We send them into teachers. We send them to corporate partners that have volunteer programs for their employees. And they go in and they have all the tools they need to tell a story, to read a story to children and communities. And that really kind of anchors RIF's core philosophy. You can't do everything. You can't, any organization that thinks they can solve every problem for every part of their business, I would love to learn from you. In our experience, reading is fundamental, serves a very unique place in a child's reading journey. And it really is about leading with joy, helping children see that there is joy in reading. There's a reason for them to want to read. And we believe with that, opportunity follows. Again, I've mentioned this, but it's probably worth highlighting again. Our program model is really centered on choice, access, and driving engagement. So we do not select. We believe firmly that we can't tell a child what to read. If I told you all what you had to read, right, you'd probably do it because it's your job, but it might not be the thing that drives you back for more. We believe by creating that joy of reading, that kind of inspiration that I had from Mrs. Mosier in 4th grade, right, that wants me to pick up a book, to learn something, to recognize there's value in it. That's really what we're all about. So providing broad access to kids for a large selection of titles that they can pick up, that they can touch, they can feel, they can explore, they can see themselves in, they can see experiences that they might want to have. We need them to want to read, and that starts with giving them choice. Again, for the majority of children that we serve in this country, 2/3 of children in this country do not have access to a book in their home. So a big part of our work is also coming into communities and bringing those resources. We call them book celebration events. How exciting is that, right? We celebrate books, and I'm going to show you some pictures to bring it to life. But we celebrate books, and the moment of joy that I see in a child's face every time I have the pleasure of experiencing this, I wish I could bring you all along with me. I can tell you the story. I can try and bring it to life, but it is a unique experience, and it's something that happens no matter where we are. A child will come into a room, they'll pick up a book, and the first question they ask me is, "Are you sure that it's mine?" And we actually put a little sticker inside every book that lets a child write their name in it. So they own it. It's book ownership, right? So they can write their name into the book. It's the first thing they always ask me. The second question they always ask me is, can I take another one? Because I have a sibling at home. And we don't have any books at home. And it's modeled no matter where we go. It's about choice, it's about access, and it's about engagement. And creating that amazing culture of reading, a culture of literacy. If it's in the home, if it's in the school, again, really modeling that behavior for children. So book ownership for every child, again, is all about ensuring that children have books in homes. I can tell you that we are across the country all day, every day during the school year. We do some of it in the summer, but summer is usually a little quieter for us, where we're going into communities and we're creating book celebration events. Picture a room like this, a lunchroom, hopefully one that's not on fire. I will tell you, I was in central Detroit one year, and the lunchroom was adjacent to the kitchen. We set up this huge book celebration event for the kids, and the kitchen started on fire. So then we were in the rain outside, and there's a lot going on at that particular event. But in rooms like this across the country, in schools that really, many of them don't have libraries anymore. Most of them don't have what they call media specialists now. So many of them are trying to deal with multi-purpose issues. We come into a room like this and we create an opportunity for a child to own a book. And we celebrate the power of books. And at the end, I made sure with the team here that we could show a quick video. Because again, I can tell you, but when you see it, it really does bring the work and the power of this very simple concept. Again, who hasn't bought a book for a child? Who hasn't taken a book off a shelf in any of the places that you all work and taken it to a child in your life? That joy exists. There are so many children in this country that are in communities that just don't have that simple solution. And that's really what Reading is Fundamental is all about. We also believe, super happy that they picked this slide, by the way, to put in there. We also believe that a big part of our job is to ensure that the nation is aware and talking about the importance of children's literacy. So I have had the pleasure over the years to participate in events. Who you see here is LeVar Burton, who some of you may be familiar with. It did a great program on the public broadcasting service for many years called Reading Rainbow. And back in the day when there was so few pathways for people to consume information through media, it had a powerful impact on children across the country. I certainly could sing the song for you of Reading Rainbow, but really he is a leading voice for the power of children's literacy. And it's a big part of what RIF does. We partner, we are lucky enough to have an issue that even in today's volatile world is not super controversial. Again, nobody would disagree that every child should be able to read. So we partner with every administration since the Johnson administration. We have partnered with governors nationwide. We have partnered with celebrities like LeVar Burton and others, athletes, you name it. People have joined RIF to raise the profile for this important issue. And it's a big part of our focus in the coming years is to once again, now that the nation's paying attention again, I think because of COVID, I hate to say it, but we want to take advantage of this opportunity and get more people talking about this issue. If every person bought a book for a child in their life, imagine the power of that. And that's a big part of what we do and what we want to continue to do. And I've mentioned the importance of kind of creating that culture of reading, but I think it's important to note that family and community engagement is critical as well. Again, we don't believe there's any one solution to solving any problem, and sustainability is central to making sure that this continues. So if we get community partners that are working on this, if we get families that believe that it's important to have books available for their children, but recognize that they can't buy them themselves, then we want to make sure that we provide them with tools and resources that they can make available. There's not a parent out there that doesn't want the best for their kid. There's not a parent out there that wouldn't take a book. I've been at all these book celebration events across the country. Can't tell you the number of them that have been at family literacy nights where, son is walking down, mom is behind him, and son says, "Mom, I don't like to read." And mom says, "You're going to read and you're going to pick a book or I'm going to pick it for you." That happens just as much as a child saying, "Can I take 2 books home for my sibling?" Our program model, I didn't mention this, but I should have. At our book celebrations across the country, we allow children to pick 3 books. So it's not 1, it's not 2, but it's 3 books that they get to pick. They put them in a bag, which I brought some bags for everybody, and they're outside. I encourage you to please take them home with you as a reminder of the work that Reading is Fundamental does. But we provide those books or those bags to students, and what they can put in those bags are the books that they choose and take home. And it's an important way to then bring the experience home to the family, and again, create that kind of sustainable solution that is required for a child to be able to learn. And of course, a big part of our work is through strategic collaborations. I leave tomorrow morning. I just got home yesterday from some events in Chicago. I leave tomorrow morning. I'm going to Memphis, and I think one of your members, Silvamo, is hosting a book celebration event in Memphis. And we'll be partnering with them to bring books to under-resourced students in Memphis. We do this with partners from across the spectrum. You name the corporate category, from retail to fast food to print and manufacturing. We partner with organizations to support the communities that they serve. We do a lot of work. Another great example, Dollar General, is a longstanding partner of Reading is Fundamental, and where they have distribution plants across the country. We, for over 20 years, have partnered with the schools in those communities on behalf of Dollar General to bring books and reading resources to those schools and those communities where the people that are working in their manufacturing plants and distribution plants live and work. So strategic collaborations, I mentioned that we work with government organizations. We're lucky enough to be here in DC, so we do a lot of work with different members of the Hill. Certainly every administration we work with to ensure that we highlight the power of reading. Our job is to bring like-minded organizations together around a common goal to ensure that every child can read. And our program model to ensuring that is ensuring that every child has a book. And we could not do that, obviously, without the work that you guys do. And we do not believe, nor do any of the experts in education, that this part of ensuring that a child can read goes away. Children have to have access to print books. They have to understand how to leverage technology, and the adults in their life have to understand how to harness the power of technology to impact those learning goals. But print books are a central part of how a child reads, and these strategic collaborations and partnerships are central to our work. So just a couple more things that I want to highlight for you guys, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions, certainly about football. But we can get to that afterwards. Obviously, we believe in the work that we do. We take enormous pride in the work that we do. We have a really high standard for quality and performance, but we hear very consistently from the people that we support, who are our core audience, how important this work is to them, whether it's educators or students, or parents and families. We conduct surveys after we host our book celebration events in all these communities every year. We want to understand, are the books that we're providing relevant? Is the celebration working? Are the tools that we're providing driving outcomes to drive reading proficiency? Are children experiencing joy? A central part of how we measure our success. We do that after every program we run, and I can tell you with certainty that 89% of the respondents feel that the model that we have for impact is excellent. The remaining 11% think it's great. So very few people come back to us and say, and you need feedback, right? You got to hear from the people that you're working with what you can do better. It's not that they don't provide feedback that we can use and implement to improve our programs, but there's not a person that has provided feedback for us over all of these years that has said what you're doing is wrong. We don't think you should be doing it. No, they might not like book selection, or, there are things that they might not like, but the model they 100% believe in, and they believe that it drives impact for the children that they serve. So with that, I think the next slide is the video. See if this works. So I'm not sure I can do better than that. But as you can see, you'll walk into these events, children get to pick, they're excited. We'll generally host a read aloud, and there'll be activities and different things that drive reading outcomes, right? For kids, for sure. But it is always anchored by the book. Our work is anchored by the power of the book and the opportunities that a book provides. And again, we would be unable to do our work without the work that you all do. So I'll thank you for allowing me to speak for a little while. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
My first question's for the audience. Who recognized the book that you printed in the video? Anybody? No, it was worth a shot. Oh, yeah, there you go, Rich. I figured it would be you, of anybody. Any questions? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I'm Andrea from the Independent Book Publishers Association, and the work that you do is so critical. So thank you for coming to talk to us today. My question is, we were talking earlier this morning about all of the inefficiencies in our industry and our supply chain. So many of the books that our publishers print get sent back. They get sent to a retailer. The retailer doesn't sell them. They come back. They sit in a warehouse. They never go anywhere. And in many cases, they get destroyed.
Sorry. It hurt my heart just for a minute, but go ahead.
And so when we talk with our members, we know many publishers would rather donate those books than have them be destroyed. So my question for you is, how can publishers who have books that are brand new, who have never gone to a consumer but get returned before they're destroyed, how can they partner with you so that they can make a donation instead of having to destroy those books?
Well, thank you so much for that question. And I would say, so please grab a bag, because in the bag is a card. And one of my colleagues paper clipped her card inside. Reach out to us. So I should have highlighted this. Every book is important, right? Any opportunity for a child to read is important. But we also believe that no child should feel like they don't deserve or are not worthy of a new book. So we focus exclusively on new books. Again, we work with lots of community partners who distribute refurbished books, and there's a place for that for sure. But we believe so strongly that every child should feel that sense of ownership, that power of they're as worthy of a brand new book as any other child, no matter what their kind of circumstances are. So we do focus exclusively on new books. And I am here to tell you, call me. My number should be right there on the screen. We have this amazing network of partners. I promise you, my husband is not renting a truck and driving them out across the country normally. We have this network of community partners, 27,000 strong. And I can guarantee you that the minute we get an opportunity for donated books, we have a waiting list of schools that are hungry for resources. There is absolutely an audience for it. And a central part of our work is being a conduit from these opportunities of these books out to these community partners. So we can absolutely leverage them. And I would add that our focus is again, children, right? So, but children in high school need access to books just as much as children in, elementary school or pre-K. So please call me. If you have books that you could donate, we could absolutely take advantage of that. I'll share a quick story. I was in New York when I had first started with Reading is Fundamental, and meeting with a book publisher. And he asked me kind of a similar question. He pulled out printed a spreadsheet from his computer. He said, Alicia, I've got all these books in my warehouse. And he handed it over. And by the end of the following month, we were able to kind of get those books distributed. Not to get too far in the weeds, but you guys are people that get in the weeds. So I will say logistics on distribution can always be an issue for us. And it's mainly tied to the schools that we partner with. That example I gave you over COVID when we drove to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, they only had workers available at their warehouse between 12 and 2 on Wednesdays. So we always that can present sometimes a challenge for people that are willing to make the donation, but have their own logistics issues that they have to deal with. But we generally are able to work through those. But absolutely, that's great. Thank you,
David.
You're to be commended for your work. And I do have a question, though. Are there any books that you are hesitant to take? So, as an example, we have quite a few religious publishers who have children's books. Are you interested in taking those as well, or is there anything we should be aware of?
Yeah, we are. So at Reading is Fundamental, I think central to our model is our partnership with our local community partners. We don't choose the books that go to a school in Poughkeepsie or in West Palm Beach or in Cheyenne. Our local community partner will look at the resources that we have available, and they'll make those choices. It's important for us that we have a diverse selection of books that can support any interest or any learner. So I won't say that we don't curate if there is wholly inappropriate content for children. That would be a hard line for us. But religious books, diverse books, absolutely, our job is to have a broad selection so that those decision makers in local communities can select the books that make sense for their children. So for sure. Pre-K through 12. So early learning, it's really birth. Board books, by the way, are gold for us, right? Because they're really hard to get. But early learning all the way through 12.
I know, I just should have stood over here, but you know.
Say you are a book manufacturer and you are motivated to host a celebration of the book. And maybe even we have a contest within the organization to see who can have them and the biggest. What are the logistics as a manufacturer that would be required of you? Do you need to have the relationship with the school? Does it have to happen at a school? What's the role of the manufacturer as partner to be able to host an event like this in their community? Because one thing that I can't, having come to the book manufacturing side recently, and one of the reasons why we were so excited to have you speak is because publishers don't always recognize how committed book printers are to the business that they're in and how committed they are to their communities. So a lot of these folks do things like this, or they work with homeless, or they work with food shelters. So a lot of them are already very much engaged in their communities. So it wouldn't be starting from scratch. But if they wanted to do this specifically, what would be required of them?
Sure. So one of the things that RIF is able to do is really be that bridge, right? So you're an expert at what you do. You identify the communities that are important for you to be able to demonstrate your kind of commitment to the community. We bring everything else. We've done events at food shelters, at food pantries across the country. They've been our local community partner. We put reading corners in housing communities in some cases. We certainly host book celebration events. So our area of expertise is our network in communities across the country to identify a location where these celebrations can happen. Our ability to manage the events. So we do all of that work. And we do have some partners who want to participate. So I'll use the gorilla in the room, right? Amazon. Amazon's a big corporate partner of ours. And they have identified reading as kind of part of their legacy and an important thing that they want to kind of philanthropic project that they want to focus on. So we partner with them in communities across the country. We manage all the logistics of the events. They send volunteers because they want it to be an opportunity for their local workforce to participate. But those volunteers show up and they celebrate. They're not responsible for managing the logistics of the event. So I made it a complicated answer. To be as direct as possible, you identify the markets, you bring the dollars. We bring everything else. We stand up the events. We work with all the details that are real, right? In partnering with schools today. So most schools are very willing to work with RIF. They're not always willing to work with a local company, right? Because there are all kinds of logistics that go along with that. So we have. And you can even see from this image, right, from the materials to the event logistics to the connection with the local community, we handle all of that. We look to our partners to identify the markets, that are important to them. And if they don't know, if we have some partners that say, look, we just want to do this, we're not dedicated to any one market, then we'll identify markets where the need is greatest, and we'll suggest markets. But we bring all the other resources to the table. And we generally will work with our partners. Some care more than others about themes and activities that might happen at these local events. So it's really just a partnership, but that's what we bring. And we're doing it on Wednesday with Silvamo. So maybe I'll send some pictures back and you can share them out.
Please, that'd be great. Well, I have a question as someone. My brother-in-law is a middle school librarian, and have friends that are librarians at schools. Living in the state of Florida, as I do now, there's been challenges among what books are allowed in schools to a certain degree. Have you come across that in your book celebrations and partnering schools, and how has that affected book selection and things of that nature?
Well, it is obviously it's a topic that has suddenly become top of mind for a lot of people. For Reading is Fundamental, because of our model, because we don't choose, because our local partners choose the books that get distributed, it hasn't been a problem for us. That having been said, RIF fundamentally believes that all books our children should have access to, but they should be curated by decision makers, by educators, families, whoever at the local level to ensure that they're appropriate for the children that they serve. So we have, because of our model, not really been caught up in this, but we absolutely, with the partners that we work with, the local community partners that we work with, get lots of questions. And one of the reasons that we're such a valuable partner for them is because we have a wide selection of titles for them. So there will be titles in our library that you might not like for your local community in Florida or wherever, for all the rules that Florida has now put in place. But there are plenty of additional titles that are available to them to be able to select from.
Any other questions? Well, Alicia, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.